Hey Squishies! Back again for another vlog. This is Steven Universe, Season 3, Episode 9, 3 Gems and a Baby. And this was a really good flashback episode. Unless I'm mistaken, I think this is the first flashback episode that doesn't have Rose in it, which is interesting. It makes me wonder what future flashback episodes might do. Because so far, the Greg stories have been progressing in kind of chronological order. He talked about how he met Rose, and then he talked about, getting closer to Rose, and then he talked about talking about babies with Rose, and now we have Steven exists. So, are we not going to have flashback episodes? Is somebody else going to take over the storytelling? Are they going to change that pattern? Are we going to have flashback episodes where Steven is older? We'll see. The winter setting, the whole blizzard thing, was pretty cute because I don't know if this was intentional or not, but there really was a massive blizzard in this region 14 years ago. It was, because this episode, let's see, it was 13 years and 10 months, which is pretty close to 14 years. So yeah, that's a thing. And of course, this is very, in the same sense that Gem Harvest was the Thanksgiving special, even though Thanksgiving appears not to exist in the Steven universe. This was, in that same sense, this was the Christmas episode. And you can tell because it ends with a nativity scene. Which I thought that was actually really cute. Like, I'm normally pretty on Christmas specials and Christmas stories and turning characters into Jesus references and all that kind of stuff. But I think it works here because, Steven was pretty messianic already, especially in a Christian sense. He's a healer, he's clearly heading toward being a leader, in opposition to the evil empire, has all sorts of miraculous abilities, and is a hybrid of a being of pure light with a human. But what I especially liked was just how the nativity scene was simultaneously spot on and gender swapped. With the Gems as the three wise men and Greg as the Virgin Mary. I love that they had him in the they turned that blue blanket into the traditional Virgin Mary robe thing. Also, I like that they put Steven in red. I know that color's been associated with him quite a lot. It's the color of his shirt most of the time, so on and so forth. But I particularly like it here, where we've got the Virgin Mary in blue, because it's a reference to the fact that boys blue, girls red is historically recent. Girls were blue in Europe for much of history because the Virgin Mary was associated with the color blue, while men wore red because it was the color of blood. And boys wore red. Pink as a color didn't even really exist until relatively historically recently. And then there was this weird period in the early 20th century where, it was going back and forth of which color was more appropriate for which gender, and then it kind of settled down to girls in pink and boys in blue. But it was, historically quite recent. So that was a nice gesture toward that. Interesting that he kept, like, exposing his gem. I wonder if that's, like, a thing. Like, if that's why his shirt so often rides up. Maybe his gem does need to breathe. It would explain why gem bases have atmospheres at all. Because you wouldn't think rocks would need them. But, like, the base on the moon has air. It would explain why. Mostly, though, this was... the focus was on what is Steven. And the gem's struggling to understand what Steven is. And Greg also struggling to understand. And they each approach Steven as being like themselves. Greg sees Steven as a human boy. And is unprepared for when the gem side of him activates with that glow. Amethyst sees him as a shapeshifter and has difficulty with the fact that his growth is going to be very slow. Garnet sees him as a fusion of Greg and Rose and has difficulty with the fact that he's not two beings in a conversation. He's not a Gestalt entity. He's him. Singular. And doesn't understand when Garnet separates. Which, again, nice little touch. Steven is clearly in the age range here where he hasn't learned object permanence yet. He hasn't yet figured out that, like, when something is no longer in his field of vision, it can still exist. So he doesn't understand that Garnet has become Sapphire and Ruby. And they then become Garnet again. Garnet stops existing and then exists again. And Pearl sees him as Rose trapped. Which tells us interesting things about Pearl. Things that we already suspected, but it provides evidence for them. Because, again, everyone else sees Steven as being like themselves. So when Pearl sees him as trapped, she sees him as being like herself. She feels trapped. Or she is used to feeling trapped. And we saw a little bit of that. We've seen a little bit of that in the past in her relationship with Rose and her, what's the word I'm looking for? Cutting loose in Last One Out of Beach City, and It's Over, Isn't It? Pearl is trapped in her role as a servant. She became Rose's knight instead of Rose's, handmaid, is basically what pearls are. Secretary. But she's still, she's still serving another. She's still putting another's life ahead of her own. Her own growth and development is still trapped. And, she's only really starting to come out of it in the present day of the series. As episodes like Sworn to the Sword and Mr. Greg and Last One Out of Beach City slowly nudge her. Even stuff like Space Race or Back to the Barn. Slowly nudging Pearl in a new direction. And so that's what she's coming from. And so she sees that as having happened to Rose, that Rose is now trapped in this form. And none of these perspectives are true. Which again kind of ties into the whole Christmas Jesus thing. Because, there was a lot of debate in the early Christianities and I'm following Bart Ehrman in using the plural there because the first few centuries, the forms of Christianity that emerged were more different from one another than any of the Christian traditions that survive to the present day, because all of the traditions that survive to the present day are descended from what Ehrman calls the proto-Orthodox viewpoint. And as different as, say, something like Mormonism is from Greek Orthodox, they're still descended from that proto-Orthodox, and so they still have things in common that were not shared with some of proto-Orthodoxy's contemporary forms of Christianity. So, for example, you would get people debating over what Jesus was. Was he a human being who had communion with the divine? Was he a purely divine being who created the illusion of being human? Was he a human being who was possessed by the divine? Was he a human being that was somehow fused with the divine? Was he a demigod, like the Greek demigods, the result of an actual physical, mating between a god and a human? And Proto-Orthodoxy, which is what won out, was one of the sects that held the view that he wasn't any of those things, that he was simultaneously 100% God, 100% human at the same time. And that this apparent contradiction was an essential mystery, something that could not be comprehended. Simply had to be accepted. That he is one being that is simultaneously 100% this thing and 100% this other thing, even though those are two completely different things. And that's essentially what Stephen is. He is a gem. He is also a human. He is both. He's completely both of those things. And he partakes equally of both heritages. He has the powers and abilities of both, as well as, kind of the drawbacks and weaknesses of both. And on Earth, because humans are the norm, we mostly see his gem powers and human weaknesses, because those are what stand out. But as we saw way back in Jailbreak, in a gem-defined space, it's his human powers that matter. And probably his gem weaknesses, too. We haven't gotten as much of that. Those could be interesting. But yeah, this was a good episode. It really kind of got into what is Stephen, and I think the answer is a mystery. Something that we just have to kind of accept isn't... he's Stephen. He is unique. He is something which has never existed before and may never exist again. But hey, that's what we all are, isn't it? So, not that big a deal, really. We can accept that. Yeah. So this was a good one. I am now caught up with the show, which means after this, I'm gonna do Gravity Falls and commissions until either we get more Steven Universe or I run out of Gravity Falls. At which point I will do Star Versus and commissions until we get more Steven Universe or I run out of Star Versus. After that, I'll probably have a poll. So yeah, look forward to that, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!